Hello, and welcome along to this video where we are going to be looking at finishing off the last video. So in the last video we were talking about setting up and configuring Jenkins to automate our package internalizer process. We ran into a little bit of an issue, and what I said was that we were going to continue that in this video. So that's what this video is going to be about. So let's jump in. So it's literally been like 2 minutes since I stopped recording of the last video and started recording this one, and I'm fairly sure I know exactly what the problem is. And it comes down to the fact that I'm a little bit of an idiot. So if anyone who was shouting at me during watching the last video, please feel free to take heart in the fact that you probably know what the problem was. So the way I set up Jenkins, I jumped onto my workstation machine, and that workstation machine was accessing the Jenkins UI through the browser. Now, one of the things that the installation instructions tells us to do is it tells us to create a C scripts folder, and I absolutely did that. But those files in that folder needs to exist on the Jenkins server, not on the workstation machine. So I made a little bit of a mistake. So what we need to do is we need to go onto this machine. So this is the actual Jenkins server. I'm going to close this web browser out. And on here, I need to create a C scripts folder, because the error was telling us exactly the right thing, that it couldn't find that folder, because it didn't exist. So I'm going to jump onto my Nexus machine, and I'm going to look in. It wasn't my Nexus machine though. I'm getting all confused with regard to which one's which. On my workstation machine. Workstation. See, there we go. So this is the scripts folder that we have on the other machine. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and put them into this folder. Okay. So with that done, we can move the Jenkins server again, because we don't need that one anymore. And in theory, if I go back up to my project and I say build with parameters again and click build, this time on the third attempt, it should work. Fingers crossed. So let's look at the console output from this build and we'll see what happens. Console output. Okay, so this looks a little bit better. So it's getting a list of local packages from Nexus test repository. So it's running choco list -- source from there to find out what packages are available on our internal test repository. And then it's going to check to see whether the version on chocolatey.org is higher than that. And if it is, it's going to attempt to download them. Okay, so let's have a quick read through. So the adopt OpenJDK, its version looks to be the same. The version of BG Info looks to be the same. The version of so the versions of various packages look to be the same, but there was at least one that was not up to date, and it was Chocolatey GUI. So there was a new version of Chocolatey GUI. So the version that we had looks to have been out of date. So it's now downloading and internalizing all of the package and all of its dependencies, and it's going to put them into our internal repository, our test repository. But it's saying attempting to push that, and we'll have to look into what's going on there. This could be because that repository. Okay, so that's maybe okay though. So the process that it goes through is that it will find the packages that are out of date, and it will download it and all of its dependencies, and then it's going to attempt to push all of those dependencies into the test repository. Now, just because Chocolatey GUI was out of date doesn't mean that its dependents are out of date. So those all might already exist in that repository. So I think that's what was happening there. So it was attempting to push some of the dependencies, and they already existed. So that's what it was complaining about, and it may well complain about something like the .NET 4.5.2, because I believe that one's already there as well. But it's continued through the process. Even though the package may exist, it'll still go through and it'll get all the ones that didn't exist into there. Okay, so while that's happening, let's just have a quick look to see. Right, okay, so 0.17, we had 0.17.1 of Chocolatey GUI, but there was 0.17.2 available. So that's what was happening there. And it's now checking the remainder of the packages. So it's still going through, and it's internalizing. Found. So I'm not immediately clear on what this error here is. That one I can't necessarily explain, but we'll let it follow through and see where it gets to. I thought this one wasn't out of date. 14.02.13. I'm curious as to why that attempted to internalize. So may have to come back to you on exactly what the script is doing, because I wouldn't have expected it to push that particular one, which is later than the local version. Oh, unless there's a dependency with the Nexus repository. So let's have a look at that. So it might be the same situation. So let's go up to here and look at our community packages, and let's have a look at Nexus repository. Let's look at its dependencies. So this one. And let's have a look and see what its dependencies are. Right, okay, so that makes sense then. So that explains what's happening there. So there was a new version of the Nexus repository package found, and it's downloaded and internalized its dependencies, but its dependencies haven't been updated, and that's why it attempted to push it, but it wasn't required. So there's a little bit of duplication of work, but at the end result should be that all of the packages in our test repository and their dependencies should all be updated. So if you can imagine doing all of this work manually, it's quite a lot of work. So this script, when ran, will keep all of our core packages, top level packages, and all of its dependencies up to date based on what's on chocolatey.org. So I think this will be the last, or near the last one. So it's pushing package Nexus repository to the local repository. So that was 14.02.13. We had, what did I say? Oh, that's open. I'm looking at the wrong one. That's why. So it's attempting to push that one, and that's going to fail because it's already there. So that one there will fail, and that's to be expected. The core extension is probably already there as well. So we check that. The 1351 is already there, but when it gets to the parent package, which is the Nexus repository package, it will be pushed and it will be available on our internal feed. So this one, 325.102, will replace this one, which is 322. So if we refresh this, then in here, once it's pushed, pushing it, then we should see that. Let's do a refresh again. Oh, so close. It's this last little step. There we go. Okay, so that build has finished, but notice what it's saying here is it's now triggering a new build of the update production repository. So what we were looking at here was it updating the test repository. But our build then triggers another build, and that build is to synchronize what's in our test repository and push them into our production repository. So this is where you would normally have some sort of testing happening to ensure that the package works as you expect it to before you put it into your production repository, because once it's in your production repository, any of our configured clients are all set up to look at the production repository by default. So we've got this segregation of packages because the test one is literally a test. That's what you're internalizing your packages. You're making you internalize them and you put them onto that feed. You then do some tests before you push them into your production repository. So that synchronization script between the test and the production is your opportunity to do that work. In this configuration, there's no tests. It's literally going to take those packages from the test repository that we've just brought down from the chocolatey.org, and it's going to put them into our production repository straight away. Okay, and all of our Chocolatey clients that are configured to look at the production repository will have access to them immediately. Okay, so let's refresh this, and just to see how that's going, I could actually scroll back up here and we could go back and have a look at that job. So this one here is update the production repository. So if we click on this and look at the console output, then why is that? Why is doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, sorry, that's number 3. I clicked on the wrong one. Apologies, I clicked on the wrong one. It's not running number 3. So number 2 was suffering from the same problem where it was trying to find the C scripts folder. So now it's actually running. So now it's doing a synchronization between test and production. So it's finding the ones that are not there. File specified is either not found or not a nupkeg. Could not push package. Interesting. Downloading existing package. Package downloaded to there. Is there an error in the script? Oh, hold on, let's have a look. Oh, we'll have to go back to our. Tell you what, I'm going to bring my Jenkins server back into play here, and I'm going to open up localhost 8080 so that we can look at the files on here. This is my admin password. So if we look at the number 3 here and look at its console, so there's something not quite right with the scripts, so we're going to need to figure out what's going on there. But the package has been downloaded to C Windows temp. I'm going to say continue, and in here, C Windows temp 89, this one, download, and then it's saying package downloaded to Chocolatey GUI, which was this one. New spec. Oh, hold on. So what's going on here then? Something isn't quite right. So pushing downloaded package. File specified is either not a nupkeg. Yeah, those files don't exist there. And they don't exist there. It hasn't generated the. So the download command hasn't generated the nupkeg. So therefore, the second part of the script, which is attempting to push it, hasn't can't find it. So let's have a look at the scripts and see if we can't figure out what's going on here. So the script in question would be, let's get a new folder. So this PC, C scripts, what's this one doing? I'm going to say open with Notepad, and let's zoom in a little bit so that everyone can see. Output directory is temp path. So look at the output. So it was saying downloading, where was our downloading package to there. See Windows temp. Choco download the name of the package. So it's downloading Chocolatey GUI as an example. So it was downloading package Chocolatey GUI to the temp folder. And in the temp folder, we saw that Chocolatey GUI was there, but that command is missing something, isn't it? I think it's missing a parameter. Let's go back to our original documentation and we look at, not that, if we look in learn docs, I think it's missing a final parameter on the download command. But let's confirm that with what we've done before. So in here, if we look at Choco download, internalize, see if we've done this before. Download. Hold on. So I'm confused as to what this is doing. In fact, I'm confused as to so in this scenario, we don't want it to internalize because it's when we're going from the test repository to the production repository, we've already done the work of internalizing the package. So we just want the nutkeg. So the question is, why is this not giving me what I want? So let's have a look at, let's cd into c temp. Let's make dir c temp, and then we'll cd into it, and we're going to run this command. So choco download. So our test repository is, I can never remember what it is, http nexus 8881 repository test repository, and then the output is just going to be, let's just put it to here, and then the name is going to be Chocolatey GUI. So what I'm sort of expecting into here is just the nutkeg. but we seem to be getting other things. I'm going to have to look at the documentation now. Apologies about this. This was, like I said, right back at the start when I started these videos, I did say that if something wasn't quite working the way we'd expect it to, I wasn't just going to gloss over it. I was going to dig into it to try and figure out what's going on. So this is one of these situations. So in here, we should have a download command. Oh, I wonder if that is why. Now, there's a thought going in the back of my head, and I'll explain what that is in a second. But I'm just going to attempt something here. More dependencies. So I'm going to go back into here and I'm going to delete this. Oh, I did put them there. Oh, hold on then. Oh. No. So the thought that was going through my head there was that we recently went through a process of updating this particular section of the community repository. There was a pull request that I literally merged earlier today in preparation for doing this video. And one of the things that we did was we removed a flag that was called ignore dependencies. And I'm curious as to whether it was on this one. Or am I misremembering something now? So what we're seeing here is that those nutkegs are there. But then immediately what comes along is it will remove any nutkegs from there before the push happens. So it should find them. So why did this not work? So package was downloaded to there. Pushing downloaded package. Pushing all of those to production repository. File specified is either not found or not a nutkeg. It was looking for chocolatey core extension.nutkeg. So it is looking in the right place. So bear with me while I try and figure this out. It's downloaded, so we know that it's done that part, and then it's attempting to push to the production repository a choco push of the package path. Well, hold on though. See, I think I'm onto something. I think I am, because it's so the so I think I'm onto something, and the thing that I'm onto is there was a whole discussion around it, and it was by, nope, that didn't work. It was Paul that brought it up. Okay, I'm not sure why that's not loading. There was a whole discussion about whether or not we were going to ignore dependencies. And I think what's happening here, looking at this, is that the choco push command is only expecting one path. So we're giving it an entire path, which is the nut keg, all the nut kegs. And then we are pushing that to the, so that I would love to get this working. Because if we go back to here and we go into here and just say continue, 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 do this for all of them. And I'm going to say ignore dependencies. Then I'll just get the Chocolatey GUI package. And then it will push that single package up to the feed. Now, the reason that we debated about this is because although the dependencies of a package can change over time, it's highly unlikely. But there was an edge case here that they wanted to capture the potential for the dependencies having changed and also needing to synchronize over. But I think that's a null. I think that's a null point. The more I think about it, it's not valid anymore. So when we did the Choco download over here, I'm going to say ignore dependencies. And I'm going to speak to the team about this when I go back. Dependencies. I'm going to save that, right? And I'm going to run this update production. So normally the update to production repository runs as a trigger from the other ones. I'm going to run it manually. And I'm going to say, oh, that's not what I want to do. I wanted to click build. And I want to run that manually. So if I go into here and look at the build log. So if this works, by the time you maybe watch this video, this error will be fixed on the website. So when you copy and paste over, you don't need to worry about it. Is my hope, right? Because this should hopefully just work. So let's let this run through and see what happens. So if this works, what should happen is over on our Nexus repository, currently in our test repository, we've got Chocolatey GUI 0.17.2. So Chocolatey GUI 0.17.2, but in our production repository, we don't have that. So Chocolatey GUI only has 0.17.1. So once this script finishes, hopefully we'll have 0.17.2 over in our production repository. So let's see if this works. Let's see. So now it's pushing, attempting to push to the production repository. I think this is going to work. I think. Push in. Let's push in. Maybes. Okay, good. So over here, if we now hit refresh and we expand Chocolatey GUI, There we go. Okay, so there's a slight bug in the script, but hopefully by the time you've caught up with the recording, I've fixed it on the community repository. So to recap where we were, we have created a Jenkins job that will look at our test repository. It will find out what package versions that we have. It'll check on chocolatey.org if there are any newer versions of said packages. If there are, it will download and internalize those and put them into our internal Nexus test repository. And that's the single job. That job then triggers another job, which is to synchronize our test repository to our production repository. And that's the opportunity where you can run some tests. Okay, now, right now, there are no tests in there. The script literally has a comment block that says, put some tests here. Okay, so with that done, our test repository will now be, there are two things happening there. Our test repository will be in sync with what's available in community repository, and then we sync our test repository to our production repository. So now on all of our client machines, we could then update to the latest version of Chocolatey QE because there was a newer version available. So that's the first script. So that's the first script that's doing a lot of work for you. If you imagine the amount of work that would take you to manually run through, then it's gone through and it's tested a bunch of stuff. Okay, so the thought process here is that in your test repository, you have vetted all the packages that you have in your test repository. You've at least vetted to know that they are ones that you want and that you're happy to have automatically updated. And if you enable this, then it will do that work for you. It can do it on a trigger, or it can do it on a schedule to say, check community.org, is there a new package version, download and internalize it, and then push it to my production repository once you've done some tests. The other one is, well, I want to download and internalize a new package. So there's a scenario here where I want to add packages into my Nexus repository so that my clients, my client machines, can update them. So right now, if we look in here, one of my favorite little utility tools on chocolatey.org is Winderstat. It's a little utility tool that will find and it'll go across your drives and it'll figure out where all the space is gone. It'll figure out what big files are, what is occupying a lot of space on your hard drive. It's a great little utility tool. I want that in my production repository so I can install it on my clients. So the other job that Jenkins provides for you is this internalize packages from the community repository. So this is not about synchronizing and checking things are up to date, etc. This is about bringing down particular packages. So I can say run build with parameters here, and it wants me to give it a list of packages. So in this instance, I'm just going to give it a single one. So I just want Winderstat. Now I could have typed the commands and done all the work, but I'm just going to allow the automation to work for me. So I've given it the package name, which I know is called Winderstat, and I'm going to say build. So if we look at the console output for this one, once it's available, I'm going to click here and I'm going to go console output. So what we'll see happening is it has taken that package name, and it could have been semicolon separated, but I'm just doing the one of them. It's running package internalizer. It's looking at the install script. It's finding out what URLs are needed. It's downloading all of the dependencies. It's going to repackage that nupkeg, and it's going to push that into my internal Nexus test repository. Okay, so then in my test repository, that package would be there. But remember, the way that we've set this Jenkins build up is it's then going to trigger another build. And that other build is to essentially synchronize between test and production. So if we look at the console output for this one, we should see that synchronization happening again. So it's going to look at what's in my test repository, and it's potentially going to run some tests. Again, just to reiterate again, the scripts as are don't do any, there's no tests. You would want to add some tests in there if you need that. Okay, but all this is going to do is it's going to see, oh, there's a new package called Winderstat in my test repository, and it's going to copy it over onto my production repository. So then, once that's finished, on any client machine that I've got configured with access to my production Nexus repository, I can then just install packages from there. So let's let this finish, because hopefully what it will say is, so if we go up to here and clear this while we're waiting on that build output. So if we do a chocolist -- source prod nexus, that's not going to work because that's not spelled correctly at all. Chocolist source prod nexus. This won't include windorstat, so we won't be able to install it from there unless it pushes it before it comes back with the result. It shouldn't, hopefully. So again, there we go. Windorstat is not there, but it has in the background, it has just pushed it. So if I run that same command again, we should then see the windorstat package has been added. And then because of my configuration on this machine, which doesn't have access to the community repository, I should be able to run choco install windorstat, and it will bring in that downloaded, internalized, and then updated windorstat package. So let's just confirm that I don't have access to the community repository, which I don't. The only one I've got is my production repository. So I'm going to do choco install windorstat, and that package is going to be installed on this machine. So hopefully what I've illustrated, even though there was a slight bug in the script, and I apologize for that, I will get that fixed. What I'm hoping I've shown here is that through automation, using something like Jenkins, it could be something else, it could be TeamCity, it could be AppVeyor, it could be Azure Pipelines, however you wanted to perform that automation, it's very simple to utilize the tools within Chocolatey for Business, mainly in this scenario, package internalizer, to consume packages from the community repository, but doing it in such a way that you're isolating yourself as an organization from any upstream changes. So if installer packages, if installer applications go away and they're no longer available on URLs you've already downloaded and internalize those EXEs and those MSIs, you've brought those packages in-house. You've got a segregation within your Nexus repository where you've got your test feed and your production feed. Then having done some tests, you're then making those packages available to your clients on that production repository to have the up-to-date versions of all of those applications. So having installed that, I should now be able to go windorstat, and there it is. Great little utility tool for finding out what's installed on my hard drive, what files are taking up lots of space, etc. So with that, again, this video was slightly longer than it was meant to be. Apologies for that. But that's us got Jenkins up and running. So if we go back to if you cast your minds back to that picture that I drew right at the start of this series of videos, we're now at a point where we can fully internalize packages using Nexus and Jenkins. We've got a workstation machine, which is where we've been doing all our work. And we've got at least one client machine that is set up and configured to use all of that new infrastructure to install packages onto it. So the next phase of work would be to look at setting up CCM, Chocolatey Central Management, to allow us to bring all of that local information. So across even these 4 machines, I can walk up to any individual machine and I can say, what Chocolatey packages have you got installed, or who installed them, because that's audit data that we get available on the local machines. What central management is all about is collating all of that information into one place. What we want to be able to do is take all of that information from all of those machines and bring it into one place so we can get reports on it. And now in the latest version of CCM, we can actually create deployments. So having gone through that process and we've been identified that there's a new version, so in this case there's a new version of Chocolatey GUI available, we could create a deployment from central management to deploy a new version of Chocolatey GUI onto all of those machines, or a selection of those machines, or one of those machines. That's what deployments come into play. So we'll walk through the process of getting our CCM servers up and running so that we can perform that work and have it all working. So that'll be in the next little section of this series. So hopefully you can join me there. If you do have any comments, again, in the comments below, feel free to ask questions or hit me up on Twitter and I will do my very best to answer any questions you might have. Right, thank you very much.